see them all tucked in the back.
Yeah, we're getting good about this.
Tucked in the back.
I'll go ahead and get started. We still have some extras, so don't feel shy to go back and get seconds if you do want some. You want it all gone. So I know our state legislators are partaking in the double dip. You guys are welcome. We won't take any pictures. We won't take any pictures and put it on YouTube or anything like that. We'll make sure you guys are taken care of. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. This is our first hometown connection in the city of McDonough, and hopefully one of many more to come. And working with GMA, I want to thank GMA staff for helping us put this on, and thank our legislators for attending, and mayor and council. So today, just want to briefly go over our agenda with you guys. I'm going to do a quick introduction for those who aren't familiar with GMA's Hometown Connection. I'm going to pull up a video, and hopefully the sound will travel through, but I think it says a lot about the importance of cities, and so for our legislators and those who are here to go over it. Then I'll bring the mayor for remarks, and GMA, Tom will come up from GMA, and then we'll talk, our council members will have some words to say and talk, and then the staff will kind of discuss with you guys some of the things that important things. I'll give a quick overview of the city operations, and then the department heads will kind of have conversations and open up some dialogue with our legislators about some of the things we see coming down the pipe in the city operations. And hopefully, as you guys go through the upcoming legislative session, we'll stay in close contact with our department heads and the staff here in the city if there are laws and bills that are being proposed that obviously will have adverse impact on us. As we know, these things trickle downhill from the feds, the unfunded mandates, and they somehow end up on our plate, and then we've got to figure out ways to fund them, and it's not always pretty. So with that, what I'm going to do is do a quick introduction of the GMA program, and minimize this.
In 2012, more than 70 cities participated in a hometown connection, bringing legislators to City Hall and other city facilities to see how cities operate. These events strengthen the relationships between legislators and city leaders, cementing existing friendships and forging new partnerships, an opportunity to learn more about cities. There are 536 cities in Georgia. The average Georgia city population is 7,440. Between 2001 and 2010, city population grew by 32%. Cities are where people go to work. 57% of the commercial property in the state is in cities. 46% of the industrial property in the state is in cities. 64% of jobs in Georgia are located within city limits. There is an estimated 34% increase in city population when people go to work. 25,351,990 vehicle miles are traveled on city roads daily. Cities are where people go to worship, learn, and connect with government services. The median cost of property tax in Georgia is $1,346 a year, or $3.69 a day. Other things you can buy with $3.69 a day. Things you can't buy with $3.69 a day. 43% of the average city's general fund expenditures are spent on police, fire, and other public safety needs. Cities are where fun meets healthy. There are 536 36 cities in Georgia, and 100% have a story to tell.
We need to know about the cities and how they operate, but I think cities need to know the problems that the state faces as a whole. And it's just critical.
Gather the facts, make the connection. Host your own Hometown Connection this year.
I think that was a real quick snapshot of the importance of cities. So, as our wonderful legislators, as you see, a lot of activities happen in and around these central cities around the state of Georgia. And here in Henry County is the county seat. McDonough is the hub of business activity in our county. And so with that, I want to turn it over to the mayor for some welcome and quick remarks. Mayor Copeland?
Thank you, Brad. Well, the contrast this morning as opposed to yesterday, folks. I guess we all went through it. I told 2 or 3 people here, we were eating last night at the restaurant, gentleman came up and said, I don't know when we've had 4.8 inches of rain in one day, and nor do I. But I've been excited about this morning. Daphne Guthrie, she's responsible for putting this together for us. She's assistant to Fred, and Daphne, we're grateful for what you've done for us, including this fine breakfast, but next time try to get some country ham. But anyway, we are so delighted to have our representatives with us, Welch and Rutledge and Strickland, and our Senator Jeffries, and we hope to do this again next year. I saw Senator Jones Saturday, but I didn't have a chance to speak to him. I understand he couldn't make it today, but you people are special guests to us. Of course, having Al at GMA and Catherine and Tom is nice to have them too. What a wonderful job you people do, and been doing it for years and just continue. Looks like y'all just raise the bar every year. But I think it's been informative. We've got our department heads here, but I'm sure you know all our councilmen. Mayor Pro Tem is Gail Noddy here on the front, and got Roger Pudge, recently elected, and Ms. Benson, a council person, and Councilman Stewart got here within a couple of minutes. That's pretty good to get him on the phone. He must have been outside the door spilling his food. And then we got Elrod, Councilman Elrod, and let's see. I think we covered our bases. Of course, Fred will be introducing the department heads when we get to that point, give you a chance to speak. And of course, I know there's going to be some issues there that I talked to the city clerk over the weekend. We were talking about open records. It's just one of those things that just grows and grows. And I hope it doesn't get to the point we don't have to hire somebody to just take care of that situation. We need some state help. I'm sure there are other issues. We all, as a group, interested in transportation. That's a big thing. We had a wonderful meeting last Thursday. But anyway, again, thank you so much for being here. I don't want to take up any more of the time, anybody, and look forward to the discussions that we're going to have. At this time, Fred, I'll kind of turn it over to you, and then you can continue to proceed and call on the various Sunday groups to speak. But we're delighted to have our department heads with us, folks. Those are the people that make McDonough go, and we have a wonderful staff. Fred, thank y'all for coming.
Thank you, Mayor. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Catherine.
I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Okay, turn it over to Tom.
That's
GMA, the county GMA.
Thank you.
I get any tough questions, Catherine. Well, the point of these hometown connections is basically you all see each other all the time. I mean, the council members and representatives, senators, y'all are in the community, you're running into each other at the grocery store, at civic groups, restaurants. But the point of this is basically to talk a little bit about how to be better partners when the state legislature gets in session in January, and they can share with you information about why their city is important and relevant to your constituents, and they can also help you. So when folks are calling to complain about something the city's doing, you can call the city and say, and have phone numbers of the department heads call the mayor and say, hey, I'm getting this complaint, can you give me the other side of the story, can you help me work out this issue? And that's really the purpose of the Hometown Connection, is to have a conversation that's not necessarily a presentation of, here's our top 20 wish list for we want you to do this, this, and this, but to have a conversation. So that's really the purpose of the Hometown Connection. Now, I'd be remiss, and I'm speaking really to the council members, the mayor, and department heads. I'd be remiss if I didn't say these guys are quote part-time legislators, but I guarantee they work at it full-time. The General Assembly is a part-time job with a part-time pay that requires full-time effort, and these guys will tell you they work hard. There are let me see, there are 9 Senate study committees underway this interim, 12 House study committees underway. There are 4 joint legislative study committees, without counting the big one, which is the Transportation Search for a Plan B study committee. Mayor, you mentioned transportation a few minutes ago. I got here a little early this morning. I live in Decatur. But if you leave 5 minutes before the big wreck, or 5 minutes after that big wreck, you can be stuck coming or going to Atlanta, and we all know that transportation is going to be a big issue moving forward. But these guys are working hard, and the legislature's going to be in full swing with caucus meetings, et cetera, right after the election's over. So keep that in mind. This is a good time to talk with them before they get incredibly busy with the demands of the session, and trying to slow down the work of their real jobs, which is earning a living and raising, providing for their families. We've got a lot of things going on with GMA. We've been working with the Association of County Commissioners, talking about whether or not we need to recommend any changes to the local option sales tax law. I know Representative Welch has been very interested in that discussion. Right now, the posture is that we're looking at whether or not there needs to be a fallback formula if we can't work out an agreement on sharing local option sales taxes, which are renegotiated every 10 years based on the census. And in many areas of the state, it was a contentious process that caused a lot of county commissioners and city officials to essentially cuss each other out on the newspaper's front page. And because of that, in some jurisdictions around the state, we decided to embark on a discussion with ACCG, our counterparts, to determine whether we need to make recommendations to you all to change the law. We've had about 5 or 6 meetings with our counterparts at ACCG, and we hope we can come up with something to recommend. We're going to try to do something, make a decision by January. If we don't, we'll probably ask for more time, but those negotiations are underway right now. We're going to have a number of pieces of legislation. I won't go down our laundry list, but one that I think kind of impacts every community in the state is an issue that we've seen with banks that have foreclosed on properties. Current law says that they have to record the deed within a certain time period, so that city code enforcement officials can actually track down the owner of the property if a window gets broken, if somebody breaks in, if the grass grows this tall, or somebody decides to use that property for a dumping ground. The problem is the banks don't have any kind of penalty for not recording that deed. And so because of that, a lot of the banks will, and these are banks in Manhattan and Sioux City, Iowa, California, they don't have any real incentive to record the deeds. And so when these properties become a dumping ground, code enforcement officials don't even know who to talk to, and they're chasing old owners to find out who was the bank that foreclosed on them, and then they find out that bank has already sold the property to another bank, and it's a shell game. So we're going to be trying to work to get legislation to put penalties for banks that fail to file the deed within a certain time period. And if they continue to not file that deed, the penalties will ratchet up in dollar amount through time. We think that this will be a real powerful incentive for the banks to actually do what regular owners of property do, file the deed. We're going to be again pushing something we call the FACT Act, the Full Accountability and Collection of Taxes Act, which is a simple bill. It just says that the Department of Revenue should provide information to city and county finance officers about where sales taxes are being collected in their jurisdictions. Right now, for those of you who are familiar with the checks that you get from the State Department of Revenue for SPLOST or local option sales tax, same amount of tax is collected on the same purchases in the same month in the same jurisdictions, yet sometimes the checks vary in thousands and thousands of dollars every month. And we also have strange instances where the checks will bounce in dollar amounts drastically without any explanation from the Department of Revenue. We had an instance where Cartersville and Bartow County had a brand new mega gas station pop up on I-75, and they thought, okay, this is going to be great. This place is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, has cars, trucks. It's just booming with business. We're going to see an uptick in our SPLOST collections. Well, they didn't see anything. And so they started calling the Department of Revenue, and the Department of Revenue said, we can't give you any of that information. We can't tell you anything about it. Just trust us, everything's going fine. Well, almost a year went by, and then finally the Department of Revenue calls up Bartow County and Cartersville folks and says, hey, good news. We found out that gas station was actually sending their money to Barrow County. So you're going to get a big check, and we'll give you that big check by taking it from the check we were going to send to Barrow County, which of course was thinking, wow, our SPLOST collections are we're doing great here. Well, all of a sudden their SPLOST collection went, their SPLOST check the next month went flat or down substantially to pay back a Department of Revenue mistake. But the point of the FACT Act is that if you've got a local finance officer who's able to check those returns coming in, they're going to care about it because that's their community, and when mayors and county commissioners ask their voters to approve a project list based on what they anticipate the money to come in, they're basically putting their reputations on the line. And when the revenue doesn't come in at the estimated amount that the voters voted on for a SPLOST, for instance, it can really hurt the credibility and potential success of future SPLOST. So we're going to be again pushing the FACT Act. Transportation. We're all very familiar with the Transportation Investment Act process. We all know it failed in all of the regions except for 3 across the state. This study committee has been traveling around, and the 3 regions that passed the Transportation Investment Act, they're thrilled, they're happy. Every city, every county can pave roads, can fill potholes. The DOT is doing statewide and regional projects. They're incredibly happy and excited about the Transportation Investment Act passing in those regions. One of the things that we're advocating through GMA is that the state needs to figure out a way to raise the state's revenue. So that's a big issue because if the state's revenue is raised, it floats all boats. It helps local governments, it helps the state with matching federal dollars. But also, the Transportation Investment Act, if there's going to be some changes to transportation, the transportation financing of the state, there's some ways to tweak the Transportation Investment Act that may make it a little bit easier to try again in the future. One, let the regional roundtables decide what date works for them. We had one of the regions that had, I think, 4 or 5 eSPLOST and a SPLOST vote on the same day as the Transportation Investment Act. That was in Northwest Georgia. If you're a voter and you're going in there to vote for 2 taxes, you're going to pick the one that's most local to you first. And that's what happened. the E-SPLOST and SPLOST passed in that region, but the T-SPLOST, or Transportation Investment Act, failed. So let the roundtables pick the date. Also, let them pick the term. The way that this past tax worked is it was 10 years. There wasn't an opportunity of the roundtable to say, we want a 3-year tax, we want a 6-year tax, or we want a 15-year tax. But let the roundtables decide what's best for them. And what happened, particularly in the Metro Atlanta region, was that you had a 10-year tax in which everybody got something in there. And so there was criticism that you were basically packing the list. Well, let the roundtables decide on what's best for them term-wise. So there are a number of other changes that we're going to be advocating, but don't get rid of that tool in the toolbox, but improve the ability of local governments to come back and try again if they feel like it's needed. One hurdle that probably should be removed: in order to try again, a roundtable has to get a local legislation bill passed through the General Assembly in that region in order for them to start talking again on the next go-round. Legislators are going to be really, and tell me if I'm wrong, but legislators are going to be really nervous about moving forward in a region in which the transportation tax failed miserably. They're going to be really nervous about passing a local bill to reauthorize a process for this roundtable. But if you remove that ability and allow the roundtables to self-start, then perhaps the legislators and any potential political heat on you all is removed, and you allow the roundtables to decide whether it's politically feasible to self-start and re-energize the discussion about whether or not transportation funding is worth it to that region. I could go on and on. We've got an interest in everything from the alcohol code revision to the discussion on private probation I mean, you name it. Municipal government issues are numerous, but I thank you all for being here. Thank you for hosting this event, and I'm interested to hear the discussion from the department heads and issues that are relevant to McDonough, and I'll, of course, be glad to answer any questions if anyone has any.
One thing I wanted to say about the sales tax, seems when a community makes a phone call, our checks get better. But Alabama has a situation where you call at any time and you know exactly what you got. So if Georgia can't figure it out, you know, we like to make our jokes about Alabama. But maybe what y'all need to do is contact Alabama and get us on the same page so our money is accurate, because it really isn't fair to the communities at all. And it really isn't fair to the elected officials who try to keep SPLOST, you know, active. And for us, for a small town, you well know that SPLOST is the only means we have of making a difference in our community, and even on transportation issues. So at this point, I think that you know, it's been overdue, and now I think it's, you know, just this is something that should be a big priority within the legislature.
And I couldn't agree more. I think compare the Department of Revenue's ability to share information about sales tax collection, local sales tax collection, whether it's lost or lost, to the state lottery commission. If I went and bought a lottery ticket down the street, the lottery commission knows I just bought that ticket within seconds. But if a local government asks for information about why their SPLOST check just fell through the floor, the Department of Revenue says, I'm sorry, we can't tell you any information about that. So that's a real issue, and all we're asking for is some accountability and partnership with the state, particularly since we're paying a 1% administrative fee to the State Department of Revenue to collect that, which is and the amount they get from that is far more than the entire departmental budget of the Department of Revenue's Local Government Services Division. So, Ms. Vincent?
And Tom, I don't know if you have the answer to this, but one of the things that I was trying to do locally was to pass some legislation relative to ban the box. And I know that the governor has some efforts underway through pardons and paroles and some of the other forms, but I felt strongly that that could be McDonough's contribution to addressing the issue in a small way of recidivism. But I'm just curious as to whether or not you have any information on where Governor Deal is at this point in that process, or do you have a feel about what the rest of the cities are doing or the state of Georgia in general?
Well, for those of you, ban the box is a proposal that came out of, it's a national proposal, but Governor Deal's Criminal Justice Reform Commission did recommend that the state agencies eliminate from job applications the box that people have to check to say whether or not you are convicted of a felony or not. And that was the recommendation to the state agencies. I don't know the status of whether or not it's been implemented in each of the state agencies, but a number of our cities are talking about doing this. Some, like the city of Decatur, where I live, has done it. And I'm going to give you have a follow-up call to you because we're actually doing an article for the Georgia City's newspaper about this. And we've got a number of cities that have seen the merit in it. Some have decided that it's worth banning the box from their job applications for all of the employees except for public safety. So they don't want their police and firemen to not have to check that box. And that's a decision that we would like to make local, but there's certainly a lot of merit, as Governor Deal's Criminal Justice Reform Council saw, to not letting that be the filter by which you judge people when they're applying for jobs. So it is something that we don't have specific information, but I'm going to see if I can get you quoted in the newspaper article that our staff is working on.
The city of McDonough does not have any liquor stores. And quite frankly, our surrounding cities are doing very well off of our community. And the process that y'all have in place now, the state has in place now, it makes it almost impossible to get anyone to go through that process of getting, I forget whatever percentage of 35% of the registered voters to sign, and they be checked and what have you to even bring it forward. And because of the way our county did the drinks on Sunday or whatever, we don't have any option just to move forward. And we need some real help on that because we're metropolitan Atlanta now, and we as a city are suffering from the fact that we don't have that extra revenue that is right here on our doorsteps that's going everywhere else. So I wish y'all would please take a look at that. I know you're going to have a lot of good church-going people that have different opinions about different things, but once again, it's their pocketbook and their taxes that are suffering from it. And right now, I mean, the city of McDonough virtually wouldn't even have a tax if we had the sales available to us. Our taxes are very low, and we're very proud of that, but we're struggling to keep our fire and our police at the level that we want it and do other things. So I wish that the legislature would ask the Department of Revenue and everybody to please take a look at making that a little simpler, because if nothing else, if all of our cities but us have it, and now it's such a situation where unless we can guarantee that person that spends the money to go get that petition, that they're gonna have a liquor store, we're not gonna get it.
And that's a high threshold. Senator Burt Jones from down the road in Jackson, he introduced a bill to eliminate that threshold last session. Was not able to get much traction, and I think that the three-tier system of the manufacturers, distributors, and retailers of alcoholic beverages. It's a very protective, turf-oriented atmosphere at the Capitol, and I think they like the status quo. But this is not unique to McDonough. A lot of cities have complained that that is too high of a threshold to go through that requirement. And it is a revenue source, or potentially a revenue source for many cities. But
Scott, look at the position they're in, and really and truly, once again, allowing an entity like that to keep a revenue from local cities. You know, that every local city that wants to make that choice should be able to do so without that type of restriction. And especially, we're here in metropolitan Atlanta, but we need it, you were talking about telling the state to find other sources of revenue. Here's a source of revenue you could give back to your community that doesn't have the ability, you know, so, I really wish you'd make that effort.
yeah,
And I'll tell you, what's gonna make it, with those formulas in place, what makes it even harder for us is because we've grown so fast, we'll never catch up because that 35% increases every year we increase in population, which makes it even much more difficult, because we went from 8,800 people in 2000, 23,000 people in 2010. Well, do the math. If we grow by another 4 or 5%, which we're heading in that direction as a city, that 35% number just keeps going this way and this way, which makes it even much more difficult.
Well, even if they started the process, because I've talked to some professional houses about trying to, acquire the names and the numbers, you have to take this coming elections number to do the 35%. In 2 years, which is really literally not enough time to gather all the names to go through the process and have it put on the ballot, and you're back not having enough names because you've got another election. So, and if there's an interim election in between, you really are behind the 8 ball again. So once again, that needs to really be looked at, and everybody needs to quit going to dinner with the pack. Or get as old as I am and not give a what.
I understand. I shouldn't say this since I think I'm being filmed, but it makes me want a Bloody Mary. If there are any other...
And it's open now for council members, if y'all have any items y'all want to discuss, bring up, that's fine, and get some feedback.
I want to speak to Ms. Benson's comment about ban the box. Because you'd asked the question about what has the governor been doing on this, and not only the council coming back with their recommendation, but the governor actually put legislation in place last session, went through our committee, and that legislation is a step in that direction. And what it was a certificate that the state would issue, and it's a reintroductory certificate that goes to the employer, so that if there's a nonviolent crime for which the person was convicted, a certificate is issued, has completed his sentence, served the penalty, and as a result, it incentivizes employers to hire these individuals. So there's not, you get less of a sense of having to do background checks, and you can't, just because you say ban the box, that in itself doesn't stop an employer from checking your criminal background. So it's a nice, catchy phrase, but the question is, what does it really do? And I think it makes the affirmative statement that we want to be a state that employs former criminals. They've served their time. That's over. We need to give them a new life. And we need to give them a new life for many, many reasons. One of which is just the simple fact that an employed person is less likely to commit another crime. The other reason is that it's better to have someone that's paying taxes and contributing back to society than not. So there are intrinsic benefits to doing that, and the governor has taken a very strong lead on addressing a population of our state that has been left abandoned for decades. And so I've been very pleased to see this legislation move through. I've seen these steps move in the right direction. I think all of these are really intrinsically good steps towards taking a population that is desperate to get back into the system, get back into work, get back to raising their families, being back to being meaningful and being a substantial part of the society. And we've had a governor that's been a champion of that.
Are they going to start issuing the certificates? Is that a given now?
Yes, that was signed into law this past year.
Okay, because that's very, I think, very important. Being a teacher, you know, they do a background check on you and they do random background checks on teachers at all times. So, I mean, that's something that everybody who works for the Board of Education knows is going to happen. And if you're a person with a DUI or getting DUIs, I mean, it is a problem and can be a real problem. But having that certificate, I think as a council, didn't feel any less need to know who was working, and working with our public, and working anywhere for this community, that we didn't feel comfortable with who they were, and, you know, and whatever sense they might come in contact with the public, or just day-to-day working with their own colleagues. So having that certificate gives us an opportunity, you know, even running a background check, but that certainly makes it, I think, an easier step for us as a council to, you know, to be able to move forward, I think.
It's a step in the right direction.
Right.
It is certainly not a silver bullet, but I think what we have to see is you have to see positive criminal justice reform, and that's going to be it's not a one session issue, it's not a one term issue, it's a multiple term issue, and it has to take a commitment from this city to private employers across the state to get on board with the concept that we've got to put people that have made a transgression in the past back on board. Now, that doesn't change the importance of a criminal background check for people that are watching over children, that are dealing in public safety. I mean, there are certain areas that I think we can all agree that a criminal background check and knowing the extent and the nature of the crime committed is important in judging whether it is prudent, safe, and what liability may exist. Should we ignore that information and put that person in a position to care for children or other people that have special needs?
But I also would take it a step further. I really don't want anybody working for our city that we haven't done an adequate background check on, because you're putting a coworker possibly in a dangerous position, you know, and if they've had psychological problems, if they're whatever the situation is, we should know before we hire them and before we, you know, do it. Put them in that workplace.
I'll leave that to your counsel to make that.
Okay, but I'm just expressing that, you know, we have to be as vigilant about who our coworkers work with. I mean, to me, it's tantamount to when you as a teacher cannot be informed if a child has a certain type of disease, or if a child that you're dealing with that might bleed out, that whatever. They say you have to do certain things, but there are all kinds of situations where those little gloves and those things aren't, you know, there. That you're put in situations where you have children that come in that are violent, and I've been in a situation where a child has attacked, administrators. And I don't mean a little attack. I'm talking about a major, full-blown attack on a person. And so I don't want to do that under any circumstances to any coworkers for the city of McDonough. I want to make sure that we have a full background check. But I am for the massive amount of nonviolent criminals that we have, that have served their time. It's ridiculous when you see the numbers that they are not gainfully employed and giving back to society.
And for a shameless plug, GMA has a service, Frederick, where we work with a company to provide background checks when the city feels like it's appropriate. So give us a call, we'll help you out when it's appropriate, when the decision's made locally.
Yeah,
Ms. Benson?
Yes, I just wanted to shift the discussion a little bit. Everyone knows that the managed lanes are coming to Henry County along the I-75 corridor, and I most certainly am one of those individuals that appreciates the fact that there may be some form of relief as far as traffic congestion is concerned. The thing that concerns me and concerns Councilperson Nadi and other members of the council is the fact that the managed lanes will cover all 3 of our exits in McDonough. And a large part of what we have done historically is to try and get some of the traffic that's coming south of us from Florida and other areas in between heading north to Atlanta to stop in McDonough. We kind of started considering ourselves as the hospitality hub of the South. My question to our legislators is, we know that this is happening and we've embraced the fact that it's happening, but what we've tried to do is to put some type of mitigating factors in place with making sure that there is appropriate signage so that folks understand that once they're inside those Jersey walls, they can't get out, and making sure that they understand that McDonough and its square is on the other side of this wall. There are parameters that the state has to work within, meaning GDOT, in terms of the type of signage that they can put up. But my concern, and I'm getting more to my point now, is the fact that the federal dollars have now dried up for transportation and other type projects. So is there any way that you can assist us in ensuring that this does not create an environmental injustice piece where folks now will not get off at our exit and our downtown ends up drying up because we don't have that influx of traffic? Is there anything that you can do to possibly help get funding so that we can ensure that the appropriate signage is there from Valdosta back? That's not anything that McDonough can do, but it's going to require other sources of funding to make that happen. So it's just a concern. It may not be a valid concern, but it's an element that's unknown, and I would hate, with all of the investment that our business owners have made towards making the square alive again, I would hate for that to dry up and die.
It's also our hotels.
Hotels as well.
The large investment, and you know that we have a very good reputation for having excellent accommodations at reasonable prices, and we're very well located to be able to get to metropolitan Atlanta in any direction, whether it be Stone Mountain or out to Six Flags or wherever you want to go. But there's one other key part to that we have continually stressed with DOT, which was not directly involved with us from the beginning with the city of McDonough, and that is that they have designed these lanes, and we have 1,000 park and ride places being at Jodico. That now the way the design is, if you park and ride at Jodico and you get on that bus would have to come down Foster Drive, back down to Jonesboro Road and go, and then head north, which would kill any of the time that it would have saved getting on the lanes for the 12 miles that's involved. The same way about Hampton. If you're in park and ride there, and we all know that stays full, that again, they would have to go down to 155 to enter the lane, or they would have to get on the expressway, get off at Jonesboro Road, and get back on. To me, it is less than poor planning and design when we've gone to the expense of the park and ride, and it does come out of every citizen's pocket, and you aren't giving any advantage to those people that are using the park and ride to be able to move forward, at a better pace. They're not going to be able to use it and gain any time. So we have asked over and over, at least at Jodico Road, please try to revisit the design and give an entrance to the park and ride. And of course, they do a one-time design, that fits all, that's it, and they still give you the, oh, we're looking at it type of situation and moving forward with the exact same design. But I think you as legislators, need to be very cognizant that right here in your community, that the park and ride is not going to benefit from these lanes. So I wish you would still have something to say, maybe at some point, and we've even talked to the designer who did say at Eagles Landing at a meeting that he was going to make a real effort, but it had to do with a few dollars that they needed here or there or whatever in order to make it happen. But of course, they don't follow through with us, they provide us with no information concerning it, and I'm sure it hasn't happened.
I just say on the signage issue, that was one thing we addressed directly. I think that we may actually, of course, Tom will tell the answer on this, but we may see actually more people stopping locally because they'll see signs that say, "Here's my last chance." If they're going through an hour where they might be using these lanes, you're looking at probably rush hour times. So maybe it's not going to make a difference anyway as far as folks stopping to tour or stay in a hotel. Or stopping at a gas station, but having the signage there will further encourage them saying, "Hey, I'm going north, I'm at Locust Grove. If I get in these lanes, I'm not getting out till I get to 675, and here's a chance to stop for something locally here." So I hope it has the opposite effect. If it doesn't, and we see a negative effect, we can consider adding more signage further down the road and try to seek that too. But I think we may actually encourage, hopefully, some local stops here.
Have you seen a signage plan? That was my concern when GDOT came and gave us an update. I had to put it back on the table again, and it was as though nobody was working on it in the background. When the agreement was that they would work directly with our community development staff and the city of McDonough, because we are impacted in a way that no one else will be. And this is an intangible in terms of knowing the impact with the utilization of the SunPass. If you're coming through from Florida and you're just going through and you have the ability to use that transponder from your state, you may, in the plan of your trip, not even consider stopping at McDonough. And I was one of those folks who got off of the interstate in McDonough and drove down to the square and just said, "This is where I want to live." And that really happened to me. And so I'm just saying, I want to ensure that that signage is there and that it says more than, next stop 675 or whatever. We just need some type of funds that will assist us with making sure that people understand that there is a city on the other side of the interstate.
And I haven't seen, y'all seen the language of the signage yet? It's probably premature.
I haven't, but I was, Todd Long assured me, I had a private meeting with Todd, and I was in another meeting when there was a group of people from Tampa. They got these same lanes in Tampa.
Oh, absolutely.
They had absolutely the same concerns y'all had.
Depot City was in
And
that.
they, and when it was all said and done, they said, we were not affected one bit. The people that are gonna use those lanes, it's gonna be me. Now, you talked about having to back up, Gail, to go back north. I live between 155 and Locust Grove. When I go to Atlanta, I'm going 155, shorter. But because of these lanes, when we're in session, I promise you, I'm going to Locust Grove to get on I-75 so I can hop right in that lane. But they had no intention of nothing but getting to Atlanta. And that's gonna be the people that ride these. I know, I understand that, but I'm just saying, the people that are gonna pay that $650 are the people that want to get to Atlanta. They had no intention whatsoever of stopping it. Because when I go to Florida, I know where I'm gonna stay when I'm traveling. And I think the people that plan that out, if they know McDonough, if we're advertising McDonough the way we should be, that it's a place to come visit, they're gonna know to stop. And they'll know those lanes, because like I said, I was promised that signage will absolutely, positively tell you, you get on this, you're going straight through, and I think we ought to be able to get something in Locust Grove that says McDonough next 3 exits, something. You can't, if you get on the managed lanes, you won't be able to stop at McDonald's.
And that's the kind of
And that's
signage
absolutely, and I think that's a given. I mean, I think that's, we can make that happen.
But
And the same thing in Stockbridge.
Right.
And it has to be more than conversation, because this is, you just said it beautifully. When you were talking about Tampa and how it impacted them. You were making reference to Evo City. You may not know that, but Evo City is a tourist destination. It is very well known for its historical significance in Tampa, so when people are going, they are going with the intent
Of going to
of
Evo
going to
City.
Evo City, which is different from McDonough. We are kind of a collector. Oh, you're tired of being in traffic? Get off here, get a Mountain Dew and whatever, and visit our square. We just want folks to know that we are here.
We
So,
don't, yeah,
if
we
you
don't
can assist
compare.
with that would be
We'll make
wonderful.
sure of that.
We honestly do not compare to Evo City. I mean, people know why they're going to Evo City, you know, so, you know, we're a long way from being able to have that kind of reputation, so I just,
Matt, may I jump in real quick? I know that, some of us have to go in a few minutes, and then the Councilman Stewart had a question, and I just wanna remind everyone that the plans, any of these road plans, they're approved by the board at GDOT. We don't approve them, so we don't get them until after, just like you. So a lot of this is, you know, a lot of this is done through a process at GDOT, but as you can see, already members of this delegation are actively talking to GDOT, expressing the very concerns that both Ms. Benson and Ms. Noddy have shared with us to them, and Rick has been really taking a leadership role in that, and Brian too, on trying to make sure that the signage is in place and that it's not just idle talk, that it actually happens. But I think, Ms. Benson, you're saying signage beyond just the entrance and exit of this, but even further down the road is what I was hearing from your statement about Austin, which is new, and I noted that in my mind, but because I've got to go in just a few minutes, I want to make sure that we hear from other members if we can. Councilman Stewart.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear the conversation. You was addressing the file of the deed by the banks, you know, abandoned houses, because in McDonough itself, we have a lot of abandoned houses that we can't find the rightful owner of it. And I know the code enforcement, they spend a lot of time in court, a lot of funds, and we never, you know, 3 years down the road, same problem. How we address it?
Well, as I mentioned, about 4 or 5 years ago, Senator Bill Hamrick, who's now Judge Hamrick, from the Carrollton area, he dropped legislation that required all the banks to file within a certain time period, and in that bill, as introduced, there were a series of different fines that would escalate if the banks didn't follow that process. The banking community said, you can require us to do it, but we don't want to pay any penalties when we don't. And that's how the bill passed and was signed into law. We just couldn't, and Senator Hamrick was the chairman of the Banks and Banking Committee at the time, and a big ally, working with us to get the bill, but we just could not get the banking community to back down, because they didn't want their bank, Chase Manhattan Bank, or the bank in Carlsbad, New Mexico, to have to send checks to pay fines in McDonough or Nahunta. They just didn't want to have to do that. But because the banks are still not complying with the law, even though there's no penalty, we hope that we can make the case that we need some teeth in the law so that code enforcement officials aren't just chasing ghosts, but actually can catch the banks who are sitting on property and don't file it, because they know then they're gonna have to maintain that property, because code enforcement will be after them and be able to catch them.
I've been one that said that we should even move forward to put a lien on it when the bank's not compliant when we find them. That we just put a lien on the property. And I haven't quite gotten our city there, but that's exactly what needs to happen, is that a lien needs to be put on the property once we find which bank it is and they are not compliant. Because they're costing, you know, the local community quite a bit.
You don't even have to know who that is.
Right.
You can
Just put it on the property.
file the lien.
And
Yeah.
it's just, and I'll tell you, there are two properties that we actually having that issue with, and we happen to incur costs now because the owner that's on the tax record isn't actually the owner of the property.
So we can lien
And
it.
so now what we're doing is, in order just to chase down the owner, we have to go through a full title search to figure out, to get an attorney or a title search company to tell us who actually owned that property. But yes, keeping track of that cost, So then at some point when we get to there, we can actually file, because it's in rem, right, correct? It's against the property, it's not against the person that owns it. So yes, we should be able to file those, our city attorney can file those liens on those properties. But I'll tell you, that only works if the person has any usage for the property, because 9 times out of 10, those are doing absolutely nothing with these properties, which means the lien is just gonna sit there as long as the
At
property
some
sits there.
point, though, at some point, there would be some.
Somebody get interested in it.
Right.
This is a problem that is happening in cities and counties all over this
Well, at
state.
one point, we had over 1,000 foreclosures in the city of McDonough. So, you know, that is a real issue. One thing local that has happened to us, and all of you are aware of it, is Briggs and Stratton is moving out in March. And it would be very, very helpful if you as a legislative body would consider having a meeting with the, with Briggs and Stratton and with the governor's office to help secure an opportunity for them to market this before it becomes just a sitting warehouse and a deteriorating property within the city of McDonough and within this county. And I'm sure that y'all could facilitate that. And we would greatly appreciate you doing that, because if it took, if locally we could come together, and I'm sure the city of McDonough would be happy to participate. Griffin has an awful lot of employees there, as does Butts County have employees there, so you wouldn't necessarily be by yourself. And make that a real priority for the governor's office to take a look at marketing and finding some use of this property. It would be extremely helpful to all.
Yeah, I think that, you and I talked about that, and, we're absolutely open to meeting with Briggs and Stratton and bringing down, Chris and others from economic development to have a meeting here and let them tour the facility, see what's in the facility, understand what the existing value of the facility is. That should be, I think, will be a priority for us moving forward.
Councilman Pruitt and I spoke to the manager there, and he is putting together a portfolio on it. And so as soon as that's available, I would like for the mayor and council and for y'all to please, you know, we can get together and we can have this conversation with them. I think it's important that our community know that we're making a real effort not to have a massive structure of that nature sitting vacant any longer than is humanly possible there, and that we have taken all the steps available to us, and certainly making that available, you know, aware, making the governor's office aware, and making all of you aware is a vital step in achieving a goal there.
Just back up on one point on the foreclosure issue, just know I'm on Banks and Banking Committee. Your delegation members, we've dealt with the banking industry before at the Capitol. I don't know how many failed banks we have in Henry County in the last few years. I don't know if it was 9 total, but we had it was a crazy number. So we now see the power that these bigger banks have at the Capitol. So we need y'all's help when it comes to that bill. You have friends in your delegation up there fighting for the local folks, but there's a big lobby up there that fights against us. They don't have the votes, they have the power, so we need your help when it comes to bills like that.
Will you let us know?
I will. I'll be sure to let you know when it comes into committee.
And
We
it's
have
too
a
bad.
sponsor right here.
Yeah, I would love to sponsor that bill. Nancy to sponsor it. Yeah, I would love. Yeah, trust me, I got a little chip on my shoulder.
We've all fought that battle, and
Yes.
it is a tough one to fight. But Brian on committee he's the one that's voting against it. He's the one that's fighting on other legislation, dealing with mortgage fraud, and also we've seen a bad problem where banks are going through a process where they'll take you to court personally on your property, and then they go after the fact, after they get a judgment on that, on the note, they'll go and try to reclaim the property on the security deed. After that, there's no oversight by a court as to whether or not that sale on the courthouse step is a market-based sale. If they foreclose first and then sue personally, there is a process to confirm that the sale was market-based. So what you do is you flip it. If you're a bank, you flip it. You say, oh, what we'll do is we're going to sue them personally and say that the note's worth $100,000. We sell the property to whomever we want to, however we want to, no oversight whatsoever, collect 10 cents on the dollar. and then you only get that, what they sold it for is a credit against the note. Well, then you undermine the value, because you probably did sell it at market value.
I have that
And
issue
he fought,
pending
and he's
before.
been fighting that for 2 years
It's at the
now
Court
up
of
there.
Appeals right now too. I'm probably gonna lose because I'm wrong in the law, but we can't get the law fixed. We've tried, so that's a big issue too.
And it's too bad because the overall bankruptcy, the overall, when they, bailout laws favored the large banks,
Oh, yeah.
of course.
That's what's happening.
And, absolutely, because the way they changed the, how you keep books for the smaller banks, they actually wrung the necks of the, smaller banks. It wasn't the smaller banks was so much in trouble, it's just the way they reconfigured everything, then the smaller banks lost out. And of course, that was the whole point.
And then you got Rick in the Senate who's fighting to try and make sure that a covenant, or that the character of a particular community or subdivision is preserved after these lots are foreclosed on. And Rodney, I'm sure you've seen this all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, Rick's in there, and you're in a subdivision, you go in, you're buying the subdivision, and if your subdivision isn't built out, you go in there and the first 5 or 6 homes are brick homes, and then a bank forecloses and they sell the properties hot market to somebody that comes in and puts, hardy plank or vinyl siding on the rest of the building, where you just completely destroy the integrity and what was, people have invested in that, in buying those original houses. In a way, it's fraudulent in my mind. And it's a misrepresentation of what this community is supposed to be. And then you're allowing banks to just ignore that and sell to whomever at the lowest bidder.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna tell Rodney, sometimes y'all will approve a subdivision, but they promise we're gonna do X, Y, Z.
Yes.
But the bank don't have to do X, Y, Z.
That's correct.
And so we actually tried to put a bill together that, well, we really stirred the ruckus.
Some lobbyists chase somebody around.
I'm not gonna make that a question here, but can somebody please talk to me offline and explain to me how that is legal?
Because say y'all zone something and say,
Yes.
y'all said 3 side brick and the back could be vinyl or whatever. But they promised to do all 4, the developer. Well, the developer's gone now. That promise is gone. Bank sells that lot and says, oh, look at this, we can do this.
Wipes
We
out
don't
the
have to
covenants.
put that pitch roof on there that the developer promised. And so all of a sudden, the houses that were this go back to your original zoning.
But
Forget what they promised you they was gonna do, because the promise is gone when the developer's
But
gone.
when we approve the
Promise
zone,
this is promises versus conditions of
conditions
that's
of
right.
zoning.
If you
That's
get
right.
it, if you
You
get it in
writing.
ordinance,
Uh-huh.
then you got an enforceable provision. But a lot of times, you've seen this happen. You've seen people come up and promise you the moon
Right.
and then give you.
But the
But they
conditions are not
can't strip
enforceable.
the conditions.
And we've done a better
Conditions
job.
aren't
I'll tell you-
enforceable,
I'll
just
tell you
the
guys,
ordinance.
It
Just
depends
the
on,
ordinance.
and a lot of communities don't operate this way when it comes to planning and zoning. When you adopt an amendment, a map amendment, and you do it by ordinance, you typically will have in the ordinance the list of conditions. Not all communities do that. They don't write it in an ordinance format. It's when it's not in an ordinance format, it's more of a promise versus that of an ordinance that's duly adopted. And a lot of communities just zone the property and say, well, conditions X, Y, Z. Well, that's cool, but if it's not a written ordinance format.
Foreclosure
I
wipes
just
those
want
covenants
you
out.
to know the point of saying all that. I know we're getting off on a tangent, but the point of saying all that is that you've got this delegation that has been working for 2+ years on fighting the very foreclosure mortgage battles you're talking about. So we are squarely on your side, because it protects property values, it protects the community character. We understand that, and we've been banging our head against the wall trying to get those
And
changes.
we want to help you because this is one of the issues that we're dealing with right now, so please let us know.
Okay, I will.
I'm gonna run this through, because I know we got some department heads, so we got some things we wanna discuss, but one of the things I wanna go through, and I'm gonna go through this real quick, because I know we're pressed for time, was just to kind of give you guys an overview of what the city operations look like under our current fiscal year. And as I put up there, our public works department, our police and fire, because those are some of the crucial departments. But this year, our mayor council gave us a focus on upgrading our technology, zoning codes, we just talked about some of those. Public safety, management, and obviously transportation is always gonna be an issue here. And as the mayor talked about, we had a recent meeting last week, Thursday, with GDOT, open house on the one-way pairs and how we move forward with that 20, 30-year-old plan. just to kind of give you an overview of our general fund, which is our main tax services, where those monies go, police and fire. They talked about 42% in GMA. That's an average across the state. Ours is at 54% in terms of police and fire and court, and what comes out of our general fund budget to run police and fire. And as we grow, we recognize that that number and percentage will potentially grow as well. Just to keep up, to make sure that we keep a safe community, both fire and police. When we look at all of our funds, all of the sources and activities, our general fund was adopted at 12.9. We have SPOS funds that come in to be used mostly. This year, our SPOS funds are going to make up over 42% of transportation related in our SPOS. For SPOS 4, we're spending on our SPOS 3 monies. Stormwater, wastewater, and water, and you'll hear our new public works director talk about some of the things that are going on there that are impact the way he's doing business. Sanitation, obviously, is one other main source of our revenues. Hotel motel, which we moved from 5% to 8% last year, and we're seeing some dividends on that because we do have the most hotels in the city compared to the rest of the county. So those are kind of a brief overview of our operations from that standpoint. When we talk about where our general fund revenue come from, they do come from taxes. And that tax is property tax, occupational tax, and I'll break that down for you. Insurance premium tax, franchise tax, lost, which we just renegotiated and got a good deal on. Thank you, GMA, and the attorneys that helped us through that process. Occupational tax, alcohol, that's where we're losing out, to be honest with you. If you look at a leakage, who's going out of this county and where they go to buy alcohol, huge coming out of McDonough.
It's a great place in Otis Road.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's a source of revenue that we can get. It can take some of the heat off of this that, most of our residents are always focused on is that property tax. If we're able to increase that, we can roll back on the millage rate on the property tax side.
And we have 3 or 4 good locations.
As we go, and remember that number I just showed you all in public safety. Those two are our biggest department. Public safety is our biggest department, right? And then after that comes public works. And so when we talk about overall salaries and benefits, 68% of our general fund revenues, that's where it goes to put people. Our number one capital is people. As I always tell mayor and council, I could get guys to dig a trench. But if I got a backhoe and I ain't got nobody to operate it, guess what? It's just sitting there. So who makes it run? These guys and their staff to make it happen. Areas that you can hear some of our department heads talk about real quickly, healthcare costs and what that means to us as we look at, and we just realized that the new healthcare law does have some adverse impact with us from an operational standpoint. Public safety, police, fire, court operations, environmental regulations and public works will talk a lot about that. You'll hear our city clerk mention open records because she is bogged down in having to address the law as it's currently written, and she'll tell you there needs to be some reform just on how we operate. And thank God we're the city of our size. I don't see how some of the other cities smaller than us are actually complying with that law, especially when it comes to emails. That becomes a huge issue, and data storage becomes a huge issue. Taxation, land use annexations, and then financial regulations. And I'm gonna turn it over and start with Ms. Janice. You wanna talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on that you see from open records to our legislators?
2 weeks ago, on a Wednesday and a Thursday, I received in 10 open records requests. So many of them, I have to go to community development. It's a partial subdivision. They want to see plans, those big rolled up plans, 4x8. We don't have the capability of copying them. If it doesn't say copyright, they want a copy. I send my assistant out. We go to Busta's, we pass along the price to them, and the 3-day response is killing us. I know y'all probably don't want to take on Sam Owens, but and I know he was hot on in 12 when he did all this reform, but it's killing clerks. Some of my other work is not getting done when, other department heads need it, but we need some kind of relief to help us with the open records request. And another thing that I'm gonna be on the bad list with the elected officials, please do something about state ethics. Here again, all of the reporting has come back to me. if the legislators are gonna require all this reporting for financial and, personal, put 100 people in state ethics, so the elected officials can deal directly with them and not me. For me to have to report that my elected official is late or something like that, how do you make, I don't really like doing that, but when they're late, I don't have a choice. Those are my main two issues.
And I
Thanks.
hope that the City Clerks Association is also pushing this to GMA and to other entities and having that conversation.
And remember, under the Open Records Act now, I think, it sounds like to me, Ms. Janice, you're going above and beyond. Because what you can do is, all you have to do is make the records available. You don't have to produce them for them. So you can simply.
But they come in and they look in the file and they say, I want these copies. Then I'm required to do it.
You are, but if you made them available within the 3 days, you've made the file available in 3 days, and that may be just a nuance we need to look at, Tom and others, about if you've made the records available within the 3-day period of time, and then in terms of making a copy or reproduction of what they've selected from the record, then that may be a way that we can help lower what you have to do or reduce your workload by giving you additional time to make those copies outside of the 3 days.
Well, the people are nice about that, particularly when I have to send them out to busters. I mean, I tell them I'll get them, because I've got to take an employee. We do not allow any of our records to go, oh, the person will say, oh, I'll take them and get them copied, and I'll get those back. And, and yes, we charge them the hourly fee and that kind of thing, but still, it is, come to the second floor, it's locked. Poor Fred, he opens the door so many for people for the open records request. We just need a little more time.
Ms. Price, if we were able to digitally do these plans from the get-go, when we make a plan, we digitalize it up on the front end, would that help on the back end?
It becomes easier, and that's where we're trying to move.
So when any plan is made, it's automatically PDF'd or
We're-
whatever?
We're trying to get to that point.
But we don't have the money yet for that process.
It don't have to be PDF, they give it to us in an AutoCAD format that our staff can.
Seems like that would cut some of the legwork.
But that take the investment on the IT side to make
Right.
that be able to have that. The other side that we're running into with the open records is, and I'll give you one that we just ran into, emails. And how do we keep and store emails? Because if somebody, we're trying to build a robust system, but because you have to save so much email, that takes up storage space.
You can have a document retention policy.
We do.
We do have
But I
that.
think when I talked to Lee about this, we had this discussion, is that the way the law is written, it's almost like we have to keep those things in perpetuity. And I wish our IT guy was still here, because he could actually weigh in on this. And our system isn't there, the capacity to keep that information is not.
Let's look at that.
Yeah.
Let's look at that.
So, and that's why I was saying, for smaller communities, especially the ones that are just using Gmail or Google account, and someone comes in and asks for an email that's 4 years old, how do you get it? I mean, you basically have to go to Google and ask Google, and does Google that's out in California compliant with Georgia law? They probably tell you not. I mean, because we've heard that even from the side of E-Verify, when we have one vendor, and that one vendor is out of state. That's Georgia law. I'm not in Georgia, I'm in California. But it's a sole source situation. Do we just go ahead and break the law and go ahead and do it and say, I can't get them to E-Verify, but I need that chemical to treat my water? Those are some of the issues that, as we start to operate, we hope that y'all will look at.
And sometimes, I have to confess, y'all, I'm not always lily white in the 3 days. I just hadn't gotten caught yet, but, I do the best I can. And sometimes, I have to send a letter that this is gonna cost,
That's a lot of your time.
20 hours of the lowest paid person who is capable of doing this at $17.42 an hour, and give them an estimate and how long it's gonna take, and, then I wait till the day before it's due, and then, we're up 24 hours, 6 people helping me do it, so we just need a little relief if we can get some help with open records. Thanks.
Keith, you want to talk about public works?
The biggest thing that I have an issue with at this point in time is probably Metro North Georgia Water District. And the thing that we've seen is you have these model ordinances that come out, and then they're changed, and it's not like we just go, okay, well, we scratch it out and we make a new ordinance. We have to go to council every time and make a new ordinance. And then it's not always that that ordinance is gonna match up with what EPA wants, because then you have to turn around, EPD has to enforce what EPA wants, and I don't think there's a real good coordination there all the time. And I think what you're gonna see is the illicit discharge model ordinance that just came out may contradict with the litter ordinance, and we may have to change both of them again. Whether EPD follows through with that, I just, and you know, I see Metro North Georgia as this big monster that came in, and that's the way that I saw it from the beginning. I worked in the wastewater business for a long time, and that a lot of times these changes came down and they expected you to make them immediately, and the cost, there was a lot of cost associated with that. And then they turned around and they changed what they were doing 2 years later, and you had already invested a lot of money into something that now wasn't necessarily needed. And I don't know that, you know, Metro North Georgia is something that's never gonna go away. I know there's water districts going throughout the state, so it's gonna be here to stay. But just some more coordination with Metro North Georgia to make sure what they're doing is following in line with what EPD has to follow based on what EPA wants, which is obviously, you know, the biggest one that we have to match with. And, you know, I know there's some rules and regulations out there about sludge hauling that are on the board. I think last year it was on there. And then my only other issue away from that is DOT, I think it was last year, they asked the DOT notify a city when they come to town to cut trees. And I think that was a House bill that may have came up or maybe coming up. I'm not sure which way that went. One of the things I would like is when DOT comes into town and does any work on any of our streets, not state highways, but any of our streets that even lead up to their highways, that they notify us, not that we're gonna have to make any changes, but if you come down McGarity and there's a bunch of rumble strips one morning, and I get 50 phone calls from people wanting to know why we put rumble strips in, and we didn't. And then the people that live there, it's a life-changing event for them because they have to listen to that day and night in their house now. Maybe there was an option that we could have done, and I can't touch those until, you know, DOT signs off on it. I can't do anything about it until that point in time. That maybe we'd come up with a way to slow people down ahead of time, put a speed bump or something further away from where people actually live. But those are just things that I'd like to see a little bit more of. I'm not really worried about DOT and cutting trees as much as I am about changing signs and that type of thing in our neighborhoods that are streets that we maintain and take care of.
Chief Police, you want to talk about one or two items?
I only have a couple items. I want to get an update on the private probation bill. You addressed that. I think that's House Bill 837. And is the state more leaning toward going to private probations? Because we do have a company, we do our own in-house probation state. I know the governor vetoed a bill a couple months ago about making the private probation transparency again. But could you address what the state's issue is?
So, here's the issue, and Counselor Welch can correct me since he's was more of an expert probably than anyone in this room, but a Superior Court in the Augusta Circuit essentially said that private probation companies don't have the legal authority to toll sentences when people disappear. And because of that, that situation that potentially could become the law of the land if upheld at the Supreme Court, a bill was filed to specifically authorize those private probation companies to have the ability to stop sentences until you can locate the person who's disappeared. The governor vetoed it because of some problems with the legislation that he saw related to records that were held by the private probation companies. Not because of, it's my understanding, he didn't have any, in his veto message, didn't have any reference to the problems with the underlying bill. But in the interim, scathing 60-something page report came out from the Department of Audits that criticized the private probation industry and some of the practices that they were doing that weren't specifically authorized by the courts. On September, I think the second or third week of September, the Supreme Court heard the case that came out of the appeal of the ruling in Augusta Circuit. And so we anticipate that the Supreme Court will probably rule on that case potentially when the legislature convenes in January or February. So we know that a lot of cities have their own their own probation services, and that's their choice. But we know a lot of cities just don't have the capacity to do that because they're smaller, and so they hire these private probation companies. So there's a lot of big policy questions about what kind of check you have on those private probation companies that are exceeding judicial authority by requiring things like drug tests and ankle bracelets that the court didn't require, and then basically putting people in these usurious rates where they owe a $100 fine that they can't pay, and they end up paying for 4 years $2,000 to finally meet the terms of that $100 fine. I'm exaggerating, but those are big policy issues. But for our smaller cities, particularly, they just want to make sure that the penalties to society is paid, and that helps them keep their courts open, their police on the streets. So did I cover it adequately, Andy? He is. Okay.
Is it the state's issue they're pushing to have more private
No,
probation companies?
there's no push.
It's the city's decision.
There's no push either direction to go to more private or not. It was actually to try to address the court's decision in Augusta, the Supreme Court's decision in Augusta, which respectively prevented private probation from operating because of the potential for seizure, constitutional violations, and the other issues that were raised by Tom. So that's why this is proceeding to the Supreme Court. And I think what you'll see is that when they decide, that's when we'll react as a General Assembly, because there's probably little value in trying to bring out the old crystal ball, dust it off, and see if it'll tell us what the future will hold in that. But when the Supreme Court rules, we'll have a better sense of the degree of constitutionality or unconstitutionality that this service provides, and then we can make a ruling.
Good, thank you for that. And House Bill 60 is my other question. As you know, the gun bill was a big issue in the state of Georgia, and it got passed. I think the only concern that I have about House Bill 60, and there's any discussion about changing it, is about people being allowed to bring firearms into government buildings. I know if there's a police officer there who searches them, is there any talk about changing that somebody can just walk into City Hall with firearms? No talk about changing.
There may be talk about it, but
it's not going to happen.
I haven't heard the talk.
Yeah, if there's no guard there to have a permit, I think that's going to continue.
All right, Mr. Gardner, those are my two questions. Thank you, sir.
All right, one that I want to bring up real quick, that I've had the conversation with Mayor and Council. As you can see, this is the city limits. And one of the things we were looking at is potentially asking the legislature to kind of help us with closing up a lot of those. They look like islands, but technically they're not. I mean, they just meet the intent of not meeting an island. But one of our goals is to try to show up the city limits as best we can so that we don't have all of this in and out, especially on State 2081 where the city limits come in, come out, come in, come out, to show off that and basically show up the city limits. That's one of the things we discussed about eventually taking the city limits and going all the way to the interstate. And here's why. One, we have an agreement with the county that we're now maintaining Jonesboro Road all the way past the interstate. I don't know if any of you all have seen that.
We're just doing it as a favor.
As a favor, but on the contract, we'll be doing all the vegetation from basically Kelly Road all the way up to the interstate. All that vegetation that you now see in the median as you go up Jonesboro Road, that's gonna be ours at some point.
It's not ours now, though, I want you to know that.
But there's an agreement, there's an IGA in place that gives transfer that over to us. And if we're gonna be doing that, why in the world are we having control of the right of way in and of itself, and the properties thereof? But as a courtesy, because Jonesboro Road is one of our key gateways, and if sometimes if you drive and come off the interstate, you see a lot of trash at that exit, our guys are picking it up. The county's not. If you see the right in front of Chili's in that area right there where the grass grow above the barrier, we're cutting it. Because people think that's the city of McDonough when they come here, and that's the first impression they get about the community. And one of the things I discussed with our 101 class in economic development, you know, a lot of times these scouts come here and they make an assumption of you based on how you look, as to whether or not they want to put their corporate dollars in your city. I mean, and if they get off of the gateway that's untidy or looks bad, do I really want to bring my business here? Why don't I take it somewhere else? That was the fight I fought in the 5th city I came from in Griffin. You know, we'd show them all the wonderful sides of town, and sometimes they come back in 2-3 weeks later, flew in, we didn't know, go for a drive, and go, oh my God, do I want to go here or do I want to go to Peachtree City and don't have to worry about it? And we've lost 1 or 2 businesses when I was over there because of that one issue. But our goal obviously is to figure out how we best show up our city limits. As y'all can tell, this is chaotic. I mean, if there's a wreck right there, do we know whether or not it's ours or the county's? We need some help in that area, and so we were hoping that at some point to address how you all look at that. And legislatively, we have this conversation with the county as well.
If it's 500 people, 500 residents or less, or it's just under 500 residents, then you can do it by local legislation, Frederick, so. And so you can annex commercial, what you're doing is you're annexing a lot of commercial property, as opposed to residential or farmland, land that's not occupied by very many residents. The law is geared to protect the resident from essentially being annexed into a city against his or her will. And the General Assembly can reconfigure your boundaries at any time, but if it is an annexation that has 500 people or more, a referendum is required. So you may want to look at, with that in mind, you may want to look at it. Of course, you can always do a 60% annexation method, 100% annexation method. You can do your own self-initiated referendum yourself and put that on the ballot. Those are all the possibilities. The island annexation has been curtailed to a great degree, a little more challenging, but I know that I think we passed legislation last year and 3 years before that dealt with some island annexation, try to sweep the law there. That was a good pass.
Well, the Senate voted it down,
Okay.
Twice.
Never mind. The House has been doing our share of trying
I
to.
voted for it.
And Rick voted for you, so.
I tried.
We just like your council, you gotta get 4 or 5 votes to make things, move forward. We're constantly trying to scurry together enough votes to make it happen. But, anyway, to your point, though, there are mechanisms by which to do it. If you wanted to do it locally, I think our local rules require that you have a unanimous decision, but for one, I think, on annexation. So a near unanimous decision or a unanimous decision by the council that says, we would like you, the General Assembly, to annex these properties. Now, the financial trick in doing this is that you've got to go get a survey for us. And that's the cost that's going to come out of the city's pockets to go get that area surveyed. And
you're talking about boundary survey?
Yeah, boundary survey. I gotta have a boundary description of what we're annexing into the city. No different than you do your 60 or 100% annexations. You gotta have a legal description. We gotta have a legal description of that too. And I think it's helpful for the public to have a survey that says, okay, here's the area we're taking in. And that's an expenditure. But Locust Grove did that 2 years ago. They cleared up an island. They actually did a swap where they de-annexed some property back into the county and annexed some property. So it was almost a 50-50 swap. But the cost was, you had to get a surveyor to go run the survey so we could put into the bill the exact legal description of what was being annexed.
Otherwise, locally, if it's under 500, we can annex locally?
No, local legislation, you can annex without a referendum. If it's 500, it's either 500 over 500 or it's 500 and then over. It's that one number. So, but just rule of thumb, 500 or over, you gotta have a residence that live in that particular area you're going to annex in. You have to do a referendum, whether it's by a local referendum or by a General Assembly trigger referendum, either way, a referendum is required.
Okay. HR, did you want to discuss any issues? Oh, Keith, you want to bring something back up?
Yeah, the only other thing that we've run into with our one-way pairs that I ran across the other day, and I don't know how to make sure is, you know, an environmental study has to be done, and before you put down a bunch of impervious surface or put down a road, just to make sure that they're paying attention to that, because we've already run into some situations here where we've had some erosion and extra water in creeks that caused some issues. And we found out that they hadn't even looked at the 2013 floodplain maps that we provided to them. So I don't know how you go about, you know, making sure when DOT's doing projects that all of that stuff is being looked at properly, because I know they have a little bit more leniency when dealing with EPA or EPD than we do. So I don't know what the process there is, and I don't know.
And Brian Strickland is one that certainly needs to do it because he speaks with Toby Carr quite a bit, but, the fact is that they were not.
Rich?
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask you a question. I used to think DOT got lenience from EPD.
Yeah.
That's a false.
Okay.
I mean, I found that out. They're no different. It's just like when y'all have to deal with them, the state deals with them. The only thing is when they do the wetland litigations, they got a little deal on that because they got some set aside. But as far as all other regulations, and I wanted to ask you a question about the North Georgia Metropolitan Water District, because I've served on it a couple of times. The county appoints somebody to serve for 2 years, and then the city appoints somebody for 2 years, and Mayor Copeland will get that chance in January. So if you want to be that appointee for 2 years, I'm sure he'll let you serve. But North Georgia and EPD work together, and all the other water districts. But when EPD does come out with a new rule, and just so you know, we had a big hearing on this at the Capitol a couple of weeks ago. They're trying to change the definition of a waterway. And they're probably gonna get about 2 million responses, because basically the way they're trying to change it is if water falls in your yard, at some point it kind of comes together to run off your property, they're trying to say that's a waterway. They got jurisdictional rights to that.
So you say the drainage easement is now considered a waterway?
Yeah, it would absolutely include any time water would come together
That's called your
and run off your property.
That's called your gutter.
But what we are most concerned about on the one-way pairs about this is the tremendous amount of runoff that we have from the square down Jonesboro Street, down Hampton Street, down Sloan Street, and down Brown Avenue, on to Hampton and into that basin. But yesterday, again, cars had water up to their floorboards in front of Marion's Way, Toby Springs area there. And they have been, their usual conversations, like we're looking into it, yes, we took this into effect, yes, we did this, that, and the other. But it was very clear, and thank goodness for our department head here, it was very clear they had not looked at the updated floodplain things, therefore they were not really moving forward to do what's necessary. And on Jonesboro Street, it's going to require that they remove some of the surface pavement there. It's going to have to be removed in order to expose the drains, because the buildup is so high, there's virtually no curb. And they keep kind of wanting to walk away from that. We do not want to hold up the one-way payers in any way, but we do expect DOT to do what is necessary for this community while creating this, because they're going to build a great big land bridge in order to create a switchback that's in some places as high as 12 feet of actually surface of bringing dirt in, and to create this switchback. And it really and truly, we're going to be left with very serious drainage problems in that area unless they are taken care of in a proper manner. And if you ask them, even at the public hearing, a couple of people asked, and they said, oh no, we don't intend to do much of anything to Jonesboro Street at all. They've got to not give us multiple conversations, and then when you finally pin somebody down, they'll say, well, we're looking into it, and then we pin them down further. They have not even looked at the proper documentation for the area that's updated.
And Rick, whenever you meet with Mr. Carl, please remind him, because we did have a conversation with him and Russell
McMurray.
About Jonesboro Road and the drainage issues, and they did say that they would address those, and I brought that back up at our open house meeting with Marisha, because some of the other staff didn't know about it, but she did, and I reminded her that this, I know that was a yes and nothing that was put in concrete writing, but they did say that they would address that issue because it was brought up.
Keith, did you get any pictures yesterday from all of that?
Not from that one, but I can get them just about.
Anytime we get big things like that and you have that happen on state streets, we need those pictures. That really helps us go to bat and say, look what's happening.
We've even been talking about setting some poles, marked with heights.
Yesterday would have been a good time to have had them for us, but,
Can you also send us, Keith, can you put this in a letter that you send to DOT and copy us on it? A lot of times you're on the ground, you see a lot of this, and we're juggling a lot of different issues, so it's helpful to have, to receive a letter that says, okay, we're reaching out to DOT, we're listing all these issues out, put them in writing, put us on the letter, copies of the letter. What we do is follow up with them, but having it in writing, we can say, this isn't just a conversation, this is a letter from the mayor or from you or from whomever from the city. What are you doing in response to that letter?
Right.
And that gives us a document by which we can kind of chase with them.
We just don't want to be doing street restoration projects every year. That's our big issue.
Help us help you.
Right.
We need documentation, because honestly, I won't remember all the details that we're talking about here.
when we write the letter also to DOT here shortly, when we get all the information back from whatever few people bothered to show up for public, we only had 8 people showed up. And you can go on the website, but most people aren't aware of that. Unfortunately, the meeting was done during fall break, so a lot of people who might have come, were out of town or had their plans made. So when we do this letter from the city, I'm going to make sure that all of you are copied on it so you know where we stand and what our issues are concerning the one-way payers. And all I can say is to my council members, we cannot downplay what real issues are there. It's not a matter of trying to stop anything. It's a matter of, okay, we're finally at the table. What are you really going to do about these issues? They're there, and they're going to be there if they build it and we don't make sure that something's done about it. And it's the community and our tax dollars that are going to have to take care of those issues that they don't bother to address. So, in good conscience, that's going to be me on the record, and I'm sure my mayor and council will be, the same way, mindful of who it's going to cost after the fact.
Rodney, real quick, you want to bring up any issues other than the one I brought up, the documentation?
Yes, the 3 items that have been addressed. Thank you, Fred. I appreciate your time this morning. It's the 3 items with the bank's foreclosures, which we've addressed, you're aware of, and we definitely need your help on. Second, transportation regarding alternate modes of moving about people within our city and Henry County in the I-75 corridor. And then last, also, we need for you to revisit, please, Andy, Rick, is the green space program so that the city can expand its green infrastructure as well as the county. In years past, when I worked with both of you, and also including Fred, we had a great initiative regarding our open space and its association to the quality of life for our citizens. So definitely respectfully ask that we revisit that and see what we can do to assist.
And Alexander Park is coming online within the next 14 months. It'll have close to 3 miles of trails. It'll have a public fishing pond available, and we have what at least some of us believe is going to be the central park for the city of McDonough in years to come. as it grows and continues to grow and will service a lot of people. Y'all might be interested in the fact too that if you find any sources of funding, it'd be helpful. Audubon's done a complete survey of the property, and they are prepared to have master Auduboners to take people through as soon as the trails are there. We have some very rare species that are located there. We have the same thing in the way of trees and that type of thing. So just in what we've been able to create, I think is going to be an asset to all the citizens, not only the city of McDonough, but to the entire county. We also have the capability, but not the funding, and we would really help. It would be really helpful if y'all would talk to our highway commissioner over in Columbus to take a look at what little funding they have instead of it all going to Columbus. Then we get something here in McDonough. We need some help in being able to put our connecting tunnel in. The cost of it is approximately $1,400,000, and it is a shelf-ready project. And we really do need some assistance in making sure that that occurs. Up at the old historic train trestle, we now have the right to put a sling under it, but we don't have quite enough money to connect our trail systems into that. So any help we can get from a historic nature or otherwise, myself along with Miss Vincent, and certainly Miss Vincent has championed the history surrounding the train wreck, which is what was the largest train wreck ever to occur in the state of Georgia. And anyway, we do have a real opportunity here to do a number of things. The LeConte Foundation, Joseph LeConte, as you know, was from the state of Georgia, was first president of UCLA, was one of the founders of the Sierra Club, and is known internationally. The LeConte Foundation has given their name to us to utilize as we move forward. The city of McDonough will not be building these buildings, but we will be asking foundations to look into an environmental art and science center, of which the University of Georgia and at least 5 other universities have committed to provide allow digital photographing of collections of Georgia artists dating back from the 1730s. So we have a tremendous a number of things that have been put together for this that we would like to be able to move forward, but our infrastructure in the park is key to it, and the connecting tunnel is certainly key. And we've done all we can do with our SPLOS in order to be able to, bring it forward and be fair to the community with other projects.
I know we're at that time now that we said we was going to keep you guys, and we really appreciate you guys staying for this amount of time and listening to us and having this dialogue with us. I'd like to once again thank state legislators for attending, GMA for helping us, guide us through this process. This is our goal is kind of take some feedback on what we can do better for the next one when we do have it, and probably do, hopefully, a little bit different. I think being on GMA's website, one would probably add the school board and one of the other local groups here in the city at the next one, kind of get a well-rounded take on what's going on in the community. So I appreciate you guys really just planning your calendar for 2 hours to talk to us about and learn about what's going on here in the city of McDonough. And thank you, City Council, for allowing us to host this event and spend a couple of dollars on some good food, all local, I will tell you, all local. It was good, and so thanks to the department head for coming and sharing some of your thoughts and concerns. I don't know if anybody else, Mel, you have any other closing remarks?
I just think it's been so productive, sincerely productive. Can't thank GMA enough, can't thank these legislators. We've got the finest group that I've ever known. You know I'm over the war, right? But they are doing a tremendous job in McDonough and in the family. We applaud them. Let's give all of them a round of applause.
we're here, if y'all need any of these guys, anytime during the session, if you need information, if you think they might be able to help, please call on us.
You know, as a city, I know the mayor's aware, but is the city aware that Rick worked in the Senate to make sure that it was included in the budget, and then came back to the House for us to approve it, just under $1 million for the next planning phase, phase 2 of the technical college in McDonough. So your delegation has gone from losing, not this delegation, the previous delegation lost the money, and then with the election of Rick and myself and others, we have secured the money for phase 1. It's now up and open, and the mayor was there for the opening, many of you were there for the grand opening. And we haven't stopped with that ambitious project, because Rick has been tirelessly working on it with the State Technical College Commission, and we're now already funding phase 2, the initial phase of phase 2. You put in your SPOS, the county put in the SPOS, $6.5 million to be used for assistance in that. I'm actually working with GMA and we'll work with the Technical College to amend SPOS to alleviate the very tedious intergovernmental agreement process that's in place. We're hoping to put a bill together for that purpose, so that we can utilize the SPOS in a very direct way on the next phase. And that's critical because, and why it's critical is because you have less than 4 years, if I remember, on this current SPOS to get this project done, paid for. Otherwise, the money is gone. So, we're looking at, as legislators, we're looking at places where we can modify legislation or modify budget requirements to directly assist the projects that you all have initiated, where you have skin in the game, so to speak, for a particular project. And we are doing our darndest to accelerate at the state level those projects, so it doesn't sit on the book as plans for 20 and 30 years, that it actually happens within a reasonable time frame to service your electorate, the people that you're making promises to through SPLOST and through other things. And so, I just want to thank Rick for taking the lead on that. He pulled that rabbit out of a hat when I thought it wasn't going to happen last session. But that's the difference of having a delegation that is tied into the governor's office, as Rick is, and not. And that's a distinct difference that we've seen in this delegation, this team, versus the predecessor teams that you're referring to. So thank you for this comment.
But y'all was a big part. I mean, when y'all dedicated that money for phase 2, to tell you how much that meant, last year we was, on the priority list, the phase 2 was 20th. It was ranked 20th amongst all the technical colleges. We are now 4th. Wow. We moved up 16 spots.
Because we gave you something to work with.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying, absolutely.
And
Without that, we would not have moved up, and I would not have been able to get that money for the design for phase 2.
And Rick, I'm saying, we do have skin in the game on that tunnel. It is complete with the railroad, with the drawings, everything. And the only thing that Sam Welbon's put in this community was he gave us $65,000 when we did the little service station downtown. That's the only money he's put in here. And
write him a letter and CC us on it, and we'll get work on talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
all right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank y'all.
Have good, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Let's go to Rockmore.
Yeah, we're being good.
Talk about